Okay, so many thanks everyone for being here and listening to what we have to say. Of course, it's always tricky to pick only successful cases, because I'm sure that out there are like many excellent applicants that maybe have failed. You shouldn't be discouraged by that, and you are doing the right thing, which is trying to improve your proposal to make it successful. And I'm going to be talking about my specific example, also stemming, I hope, from learning from previous failures. Essentially, I will touch on different topics that have been already presented by Samuel and by Fernando. But I want to stress, 4 key points before I start my presentation. First one is that if you really want to apply to an ERC grant, you have to go full steam with that. So it may be that you are not in the best. You will never be in the best situation. You will always find your weaknesses. We all have those, and but you just decide that you go for it. You have to invest a significant fraction of your resources, and but that's the way to go. Then it's very important to think about the psychology of the panel members and the reviewers. So you need to understand very well how the system works, and I will touch more on that later. And also you have to be aware of other initiatives that we have in Spain, and probably also at the European level, that are quite interesting. I think one of them is the reading days by the FECIT, in which you can have access to successful proposals. Because I can tell you about my proposal, but maybe it's good if you read it, right, and find good ideas for your own proposal. I think many of grantees would be happy to share their proposals on a confidential, agreement, so that you can have ideas that you can get for your own proposal, including myself. Also, you have this initiative, I think it's from the Ministry of Science, in which you can submit a draft of your proposal, and then you will have expert reviewers, probably, I don't know them, but I think they are experienced also in panels, and also as external reviewers of the ERC, who will give you advice, like true advice on the strengths and weaknesses. So you can take advantage of that too. And also from the Ministry of Science, there used to be, I don't know if it's still there, these small grants that you can apply for, in preparation for writing your proposal. This is not much money, I have to say, but they can, help you hire maybe some professional editing companies that may help you with the graphics, for instance. Or even in showing feasibility of your proposal, it can help you show that that there was already someone who got attracted by your application. So take advantage of all those opportunities that are there. Of course, the impact of an ERC grant is huge. In my case, I cannot say much yet because we have just started. But if I have to, highlight what I think it's going to impact, my lab. I think it's the freedom to really have the time to develop a high-risk, high-gain idea of your choice. So right now, I'm not spending much time in securing small or collaborative grants, and they usually are a lot of work for not that much money. It definitely showcases your laboratory, and then it provides you with new opportunities that regard dissemination, prices, etc. And of course, that also comes with the need sometimes to be ready to say no. So many people will approach you once you have these grants, and then you don't have time for everybody, and you they need to focus on the research that you have been funded for. Okay. So as I was saying, it's important to know, very important, it's key, in my opinion, to really understand how the procedure of evaluation of your proposal works. So Andras already described this, and to me there are like 3 key steps here. One is that the first evaluation is only done by panel members. Panel members most likely won't know the details of your specific field. So the part B1, which is the one that is read by them, has to be written in a very general manner for a non-expert reader, okay? And it has to be attractive and it has to be exciting. Then if panel members like your proposal, then it's invited for interview, right? At the same time, the proposal is sent out to remote referees. And these will be the experts in your field, right? So then part B2 has to show that you are knowledgeable, that the project is feasible, that is focused, and it has to be frank. Do not oversell the idea because the reviewers will get it because they are experts in the field, right? The issue here is that if you have like some reviewers that really don't like the proposal, they will read up their comments in the report, and that's very, very difficult to revert in the interview. So in my opinion, and maybe this is different from what my colleagues have just discussed, I think interviews are really not that important. I think, of course, you have to do the best you can, but if you get bad reviews because you didn't write part B2 in a very knowledgeable way, or if it had flaws in experimental design or whatever, this is something that is very difficult to overcome during the interview, because essentially these are written reports that are there, and then it's just your word against them, and it's not that easy to overcome, because remember, panel members will challenge you with things that the external reviewers have concerns about, but you are not replying to them. I think that's a problem with this system. So I have two experiences with applications in the ERC. I had a failed starting grant proposal in 2014, and I have a successful consolidator grant proposal in 2020. So if I had to compare, both proposals, I would say that, maybe my CV was better for the starting grant, for that level of career stage. But I didn't get it. And I think that touches on what has already been discussed, that, CV is not as important as we tend to think. My failed proposal was written in less than a month while organizing a transatlantic move, so not the best conditions, while my successful grant was prepared essentially for over 1 year once my laboratory was consolidated. The failed application was prepared by myself in isolation, essentially, so I just wrote up whatever was in my mind. Whereas for the consolidator grant, I invested quite a few resources from my lab, and we established an ERC team who essentially was key to really come up with ideas and approaches to be written up in the proposal. My failed proposal had several ideas that I put together. Some of them were quite specialized, and there was not a clear focus, and the reviewers captured this immediately. And whereas in my successful application, I just had essentially a single idea, which I squeezed as much as I could from different angles. In my starting grant, I was proposing to get things in a field that was not my primary field, but I didn't have the time to really know about the field. But in the consolidator grant, I was more knowledgeable in the field. I have to say, back then in 2013, I had very little idea about how the ERC program worked, because I was a postdoc in the US, so I didn't know much about the ERC program. And then, for my consolidator grant, I really took the time to understand how the system works. And I got feedback from different people, including consulting firms, experts, former panel members, colleagues. And I have to say that, if you check out the composition, the members of these panels, chances are that you are going to, get a name that you know about, or that you know that you can get it in touch with him or with her. And I encourage you to do it. Hey, I want to apply to the ERC. I was thinking about this or that panel, so it would be great if I could get your feedback. So my experience with that has been very positive. Okay, so just, I'm going to give you a glimpse of the reviews I got in 2014. I got 10 reviewers in my report, and the committee, while they found my track record to be very good and that my presentation during the interview was very well articulated, and we engaged in a discussion, they consider that I didn't framed my proposal in the context of the field. So then there was some technical challenges that I didn't address, and I didn't consider what is already known about the physics of the molecule that I wanted to study. And of course, some selected individual negative comments that I got is that the grant was overambitious, that it completely ignores the field, and that I should be able to write a more focused, more realistic, and better justified proposal. So I got, as you can imagine, I got very mad with these reviews. I even sent a rebuttal to the ERC, which was not successful, of course, because the reviewers were right, and it took me a while to figure that out. In 2020, I got 8 reviewers, and then I got very positive comments, both from strong track record, and also it was very clear that the idea was original, but it was in an area that I have partially pioneered, and I tried to give credit also to other members in the field who had contributed to the state of the art. In the interview, I comprehensively and honestly addressed questions according to the panel, showing a firm grasp on the project, both scientifically and methodologically. So if you spend like 1 year preparing a proposal, and not only that, but you are already working in that proposal, and I think that's key. I think that's the kind of feeling that you want to bring with you to the interview step. Still, not everyone is happy about your proposal, and I also had a negative review that even in the negative comments, it was still, the idea was exciting, but the reviewer was concerned that there was just that innovation. And I think, in my view, still this is the safest bet. You bet on one idea, and then you squeeze it as much as possible, and you may get this comment, but if you can show or convince the rest of the reviewers that this is has impact beyond what you are proposing in the grant, that I think that helps. Okay. So I have come up with a list of do's and don'ts. So let's go through them. I would recommend that you spend time thinking about your different ideas. So most probably you have several ideas, and you just need to pick one. I mean, that's a hard thing to do. And it took us some time to decide on which idea we will pursue in our application. And of course, the one that you feel more transformative and help your field advance, that's a successful one. Of course, an idea that you really want to pursue. And I think it's important to bring to make it very clear in your proposal what your idea has to offer to the field, right? Because people in your field may be excited to learn that this technology or this knowledge or this application will be available only if your grant is funded. Do make an effort to make this idea understandable to people outside your field, of course, especially in part B1. And don't wait for the ERC funding to start the project. If you are doing the project already, that's the best position to show feasibility, as I was saying before. Don't propose too many things. Do consider if you are the right person to lead the project. So first thing, the reviewers have to like the project, and then you have to convincingly show them that you are the best person to develop it. So here I like the concept of persona, right? Directly from Spanish. Is your persona appealing? both your expertise, your institution, your team is something that, you know, it's something that will make your proposal feasible. So I was saying, try to talk to panel members. Of course, these are very busy people, so but still very open to help. And do, as discussed, spend time thinking about the right panel. If you do all these things, you may get a lot of feedback, right? But don't feel that you must include it. It has to make sense to you, because at the end, you know your proposal and they feel better than anyone reading your proposal. Do learn from previous attempts, you know, take the reviewers' concerns seriously, don't get mad at them, as I did. And I think this is very important also. Don't build your proposal from controversial ideas. You know, these ideas that, you know, in the field, you know, they are like very strong opinions about concepts. Don't do that, because of course, if you get, you know, a couple of reviewers from, you know, the other side of the field, then they will write very bad reviews, and these are not easy to revert. Do share preliminary evidence, as discussed. For instance, in my case, you know, my proposal was very dependent on preliminary data that I didn't have ready by the time of submission. So I decided to write in my proposal milestones to be achieved at the beginning of the project, you know, to show that if I was invited to the interview, then I would show that those milestones that I didn't have ready by the time of submission have been obtained in the meantime, you know. That's a commitment, but I felt that was the only way to make my proposal credible. As I was saying before, do make the reviewer's life as easy as possible. Show hyperlinks to cited papers so that they can just click on the proposal to get the paper back. Catchy figures, you know. Put yourself in the shoes of the reviewers. And I think it's also interesting to show the potential of the project to go beyond the funding period. You know, especially if you are developing, let's say, a new technology and you have, you know, decent ideas for a 5-year period. I'm sure you may have ideas that won't be feasible to achieve in 5 years. So just, you know, name them until you know that those will be achieved in the future. So essentially, you are creating a research line that will extend for several years beyond the funding commitment of the ERC. And of course, it's also important to decide, I mean, to spend some time deciding on a very detailed contingency plan. I think in other grant applications, this usually is a blah, 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 right? But in this program, I think it's really important that you critically analyze the pitfalls of your project and come up with realistic ideas. So this is my figure 1 in part B1, in which, you know, I essentially describe the number of proteins with mechanical function that are important in the biology of the cell, and how these proteins, essentially, you can reduce this, I mean, you can simplify the function of the protein by showing signaling sites that are force dependent here in red and non-force dependent in green. So when these molecules are under force, the site number 2 becomes activated. So my idea here was to, you know, if you use a traditional knockout of these proteins, then you lost this mechaноsignaling function of these proteins. But if we manage to just, let's say, cleave the protein, then this active site, the site number 2, won't become active at high force. And that's exactly what I want to do if I want to specifically interfere with the mechanical function of a protein. So I have to say that, you know, I got feedback from one, you know, former panel member that this figure was too complex. And although I agree with him, I still decided to put it because I thought that was key to understand the concept of my project. So as I was saying, in a proposal, you have to have a good idea. You have to show that you are the right persona to undertake the project. And in my case, although institutions are not evaluated as commented before, I think because I was going from a more physics field to a more biological field, I needed to stress the fact that I was in an environment that actually could make this transition possible. And because that was the case, I included that in the proposal. So I just want, these 3 moments of the preparation of the proposal here. You can see that my first entry in my notebook of ideas, as Samuel, I think this is very necessary to have a notebook in which you write about your ideas. And we have several ideas. The one that eventually got into the ERC was the second one. That was January 2019, so well 1 year before the deadline. This is a meeting of the ERC team of my group and a fully dedicated session during the lab retreats in the mountains, as Samuel was suggesting. Deadline was on February 4th, 2020, and I had plans to do extensive experiments during the months before the interview. And of course, this was totally messed up by the pandemic. But I was committed to do this, so still we tried to get as many preliminary data as possible for the interview phase. And that was everything I had to tell you today. I will stop here just by acknowledging the members of my team. Even though most of the load was shared by the ERC team in the lab, I think all of these people contributed at some point, giving feedback and providing ideas.